Okay, we're at part 5 of the video. So I've done all the nighttime movements, and so it is the 5 a.m. turn of July 2nd. So this is the position of the armies the night of July 1st. More or less the same positions that the Confederates occupied in the morning, although we've got Johnson's division up here and Pender and, well, Hill's Corps. Hood and McLaws have yet to arrive. The Union Army is well in hand, with the 2nd Corps arriving and the last elements of the 3rd Corps down here. So that's kind of the way things are. Pretty well close to history, by the way. Now, I'll say a few things that maybe you might not want to hear, but I've been reading about the Battle of Gettysburg for one hell of a long time, since about 1969. And I've come to the conclusion that if Robert E. Lee is not destroyed the 1st and 11th Corps on the first day, he's probably going to lose the Battle of Gettysburg. Which sounds absurd when you think, well, there's still 2 days left. But the fact is that Meade concentrated faster than Lee did, and once the Union Army is in a defensive position, it's almost going to be impossible to move it off under a competent Union commander. Now, if Meade had pulled something like Hooker at Chancellorsville and lost his nerve or made a major mistake in his dispositions, sure, Robert E. Lee could have won. But with the battle taking place on this field, it's very unlikely that Robert E. Lee is going to be able to win it. On a strategic sense, well, maybe, yeah. Maybe Robert E. Lee should have moved his army to the right, tried to get between Meade and Washington. But that's a different game. We're concerned here with the Battle of Gettysburg, the battle taking place on this, 4-mile by 4-mile battlefield. Do I still want to play this? Of course I want to still play this. That's half the fun of playing these games, is seeing if you can alter history. Now, Lee always thought that he should have pulled back Ewell's corps to here and made his front shorter. Because as we know, with Meade's fishhook line, he had interior lines. The exterior lines of the Confederates made it very difficult for them to attack at any point. So I haven't decided whether in my game I should continue following Lee's general plan, having Johnson attack from this front, and have Hood and McLaws come up this way. And for the sake of the video and maybe history, that's the way I'll play it. I'll try having Hood and McLaws march up and kind of simulate Longstreet's assault. But I know in my heart that that is almost doomed to failure. But I'm really testing to see if the game system works, and I'm quite happy with it. For a brigade level game on Gettysburg that can be played in 4 hours or less, yeah. Is this the definitive game on Gettysburg? No. No game that I've seen or played and purchased in the last 20, 30 years is the definitive game on Gettysburg. There can be no definitive game in Gettysburg. Because if you want the Gettysburg game to have everything, take 100 hours to play it. And then I wonder then if it is even still a game. So anyway, that's enough talk. Let's get to the play of the game. So we'll have the Union move for the 5 a.m. turn of July 2nd. And Hood and McLaws will be coming up from the Emmitsburg Road, later on picket, and we'll see what the Confederates can do. So we'll move the 5 a.m. turn Union troops. Okay, that's the Union line after the 5 a.m. turn. More or less, the 11th and 1st have fallen back to Cemetery Hill itself. I've had to have batteries stacked with brigades wherever possible. The 2nd Corps has come up. 12th is guarding the front here. And Gamble is just guarding the far left flank. And of course, more Union troops are coming. Now the big decision is for the Confederates. Do they attack at 5 a.m. now with the army that is up, or wait for Hood and McLaws? And that Union line looks pretty tough. This is the decision that Lee had too. So let me look at the situation maybe we'll wait for Hood and McLaws. Okay, these are the Confederate positions after they have moved. Now, they didn't do much. They just consolidated their position here in Seminary Ridge with Hill's 3rd Corps. Ewell didn't do much, kept his position there. And over on the edge of the board here, Hood's division minus Law's brigade have begin maneuvering to go over to the right. Now, for those of you who know the battle, you're probably seeing that I'm playing the game the way the history went, because that's what I want to explore. I want to see if the game can go as history went, and if the game doesn't work the way they move the men in history, well, I've got to do some tweaks to the game. Would I play this way if I was playing competitively? Oh, of course not. I'd play entirely different. But I'm trying to see if the game works, and overall I'm quite pleased with it. So we're going to go on to the 6 a.m. turn with the Union move. Okay, we're commencing part 5 of this series on Gettysburg, and we'll be doing the 6 a.m. turn of July 2nd. But before I do that, I thought we'd take a little bit of a technical interlude again for a moment to explain a little bit about how the real battle went and General Longstreet's role in it. Now, the plan was for Hood's division, McLaws to follow it, was to march to the Confederate right flank and attack the Union on this front. And much of that would be left to the Corps of General Longstreet. This is where I'll take a moment to explain about Longstreet's role in the battle. Now, historians have been very hard on Longstreet at Gettysburg, and astute authors have noted that criticism of General Longstreet only occurred after 1870, 5 years after the end of the war. Why that year? Well, as the astute historians have noted, that was the year that General Lee died, and it was also the year that General Longstreet espoused the Republican cause, which advocated a healing of the wounds of the war and the North and the South coming together. And for that, Longstreet's name was reviled in the South. And the vicious attacks on Longstreet began in 1870 and were actually initiated by a division commander in Ewell's Corps, General Early, actually. And of all people, General Lee's Chief of Artillery, old Granny Pendleton. The attacks started there, and they've continued well into the modern era. And this book here, Longstreet at Gettysburg, is quite good. This critical assessment showing Longstreet's actual performance at Gettysburg. Now, the historians who attack Longstreet always claim that he was very slow on July 2nd. His troops actually got into position late in the afternoon and attacked around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So these historians that are attacking his reputation claim that he just delayed all day, and this is why they lost the battle. Now, I'm a Robert E. Lee fan all the way. I've read the 4-volume Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Lee by Douglas Southall Freeman. I've read Lee and Longstreet at Gettysburg, Lee's lieutenants. I've read a lot about General Lee, and he's my hero and a man I greatly admire. But at Gettysburg, I'm very sorry to say that the failure at Gettysburg is on Lee's shoulders, not Longstreet's. And it's about time we get the record straight on poor old Longstreet. As he said himself, at one point, his two divisions, Hood and McLaws, were fighting virtually all of Lee's army. And I think what needs to be examined a lot more is the role of General Ewell in the battle and General A.P. Hill. And these corps stood by and did nothing on July 2nd, while Longstreet fought the whole of Meade by himself, which does reflect, unfortunately, on General Lee's conduct. He is the Army commander. It's his responsibility. And no one knew that more than Robert E. Lee himself. because on the night of July 3rd, when he was at the campfire talking with some aides, Lee said it was his fault that the battle was lost. And it was Lee's fault. He's the Army commander. Anyway, that's our little interlude. It's just something to keep in mind when I start playing this game. I'm going to try to move Hood and McLaws about the same area where they attacked, and we'll do that attack and see how it goes. But from all the Gettysburg games I've played before, all my reading, I think it very likely that Meade is going to hold on. Meade is on the defensive. He just has to react to the Confederates' attack. But without further ado, let's go to the 6 a.m. turn of July 2nd. Okay, this is the situation after I've moved the Union troops for 6 a.m. Now you can see I haven't done much movement because Meade doesn't really have to move. He's defending. He doesn't need to go on the offensive. Why go on the offensive for no reason? You can win the game by defending, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, I have some breastworks in the game, not too many. On purpose, I only made 5, and that's an absolute counter limit in the game. The Union did build breastworks on Culp's Hill and a little bit on Little Round Top over here. So I put 2 breastwork markers down on Culp's Hill, anchoring Meade's right flank. Made slight adjustments here to the 12th and 11th Corps. Brought some reserve artillery up, and Sickles is still down here. Now, I brought Devon and Gamble over to the Union left flank to influence the road movement, screw up the road movement for any Confederates coming up this way. Now, in real life, Devon and Gamble actually left the battlefield entirely. They were worn out, and they went to, I think it was Westminster, Maryland, to recuperate. Now, in war games, no war gamer is going to do that, right? We take these counters and fight them till they die. Well, you know, real life isn't that way. But this is a game, so I'm keeping them on the board. But it would be perfectly legitimate to have a rule where Devon and Gamble must leave by the morning of July 2nd. The trouble is there's no cavalry in the immediate vicinity to replace it because they were busy trying to cut off Stuart. For the Confederates, well, their line is pretty much in the same position. And all we're going to do is almost waste time as Hood marches into position and later McLaws. And at this point I should mention something about Law's brigade. Okay, one of the criticisms laid against General Longstreet was again the delay, how slow he was on July 2nd. And one of the specific accusations against him is that he allowed General Hood to wait for General Law's brigade. Law's brigade was, I think, 6 or 7 miles behind the main column at New Guilford, I think it was. And Hood asked Longstreet if he could wait until Law's brigade came up, which would be another hour or 2. And Longstreet okayed that. So historians have always criticized Longstreet for that. But what those historians conveniently leave out, historians always do that when they want to make a point, they just leave something out. Robert E. Lee himself okayed the delay for Law to come up. So Lee was in no particular hurry on July 2nd to attack. He wanted to make sure all his forces were up, except for Pickett, and that's why the delay. So if this was competitive play, if I was playing an opponent, we probably wouldn't do this. I probably would attack earlier. Maybe I would wait. But war gamers being war gamers, they want action. They would just probably go into it. So this July 2nd game, I'm really playing it the way Lee played it. So you're not going to see much happen, and the video will move along probably much faster as I move up Hood and McLaws, and the Union makes small adjustments to their line. So let's do the Confederate move for 6 a.m., minus Law's brigade, which has not arrived yet. Before I start moving the Confederates, I should point out something I've just come up with in playing the game. It helps movement a lot. What I do is take these little wee spacer markers and put them 5 hexes in front any enemy unit. And this shows that you can't use strategic road movement. It's very handy for, moving men up you have these little guides to show you that, whoop, nope, can't use strategic movement here. And these guys are doing something. If I move them forward, they can actually influence the movement of Hood's division. So occasionally I might leave these on the board and you might see them and you might be wondering what they're for. Well, that's what they're for. Just to show that how strategic movement is being influenced. Okay, we're getting near the edge of the board here. So here we have Hood's division doing his flank march to get up here on Warfield Ridge, and there's McLaws behind him with Cabell's artillery. So not much happened. I just tweaked some of the units on the Confederate line, brought more artillery up closer. I didn't move Ewell's forces at all. Jenkins, well, he can just stay there. He isn't doing much. He's not very good anyway with a -1 morale. He didn't do anything in the battle, by the way. Lee didn't have much respect for Jenkins and his brigade. Anyway, that's the 6 a.m. turn. Let's go on to the 7 a.m. turn of July 2nd. Okay, that turn was quite simple. Not much happened for the Union. 2 brigades under Burling and de Trobriand came up. They're part of Sickles' 3rd Corps. They'll probably plug themselves in here. I just moved Devon and Gamble forward to influence and screw up the strategic movement of Hood. And that's all the Union has to do. I'll make little adjustments to the line depending on what the Confederates do. So the Union are quite secure. Now there are some breastworks left, so maybe I'll put a breastwork or 2 on Cemetery Hill. But that's the 7 a.m. turn for the Union. On to the Confederate turn. Okay, that's after the Confederates have moved. You can see that Devon and Gamble have influenced Hood's move. He wasn't able to use strategic movement, so he's spread out here, and he's going to try and form a line up here in Warfield Ridge. And of course, McLaws is right behind him. Now, overall, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. Come on, that isn't the way I'd play the Confederates. I'd be attacking. Well, that's the nice thing about war games. You can attack, do whatever you like. And for those of you who know the battle, you might have noticed that, well, all he's doing is doing the moves that the Confederates did. Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing, because I just want to explore this situation. So this isn't the game the way I would play it, like I said, competitively or with an opponent. I'm just trying to explore the possibilities of the real battle and see how it goes. But we'll get the battle soon enough, as soon as Longstreet's men get into position. So that's it for the 7 o'clock turn. Okay, not much happening there for the Union. Devon and Gamble have fallen back, again trying to influence Hood's movement. Minor adjustments in Sickles' line. Now you might be wondering, well, why doesn't he just use these last breastworks in a trench someplace? Well, I've tweaked the rules for breastworks. In this game, if you put a breastwork marker down, it stays down. It's permanent, just like it's painted on the board. So, well, isn't that a good thing? Well, yeah, more or less it is, but what if the enemy captures it? And then they've got the use of those breastworks. So you want to use the placement of breastworks very carefully. So I've been very cautious in placing them. Only 2 on Culp's Hill. Okay, let's do the 8 o'clock turn for the Confederates. And 2 new artillery battalions enter the board. Alexander and Eshelman. Let's catch the action after I've moved the Confederates. Okay, that move is simple enough. Hood and McLaws are now in position on Warfield Ridge. And these 2 new battalions, that's the reserve artillery for the 1st Corps, Alexander and Eshelman, are now scooting up to join Hood and McLaws. And letting the cat out of the bag, I will wait for Law's brigade before Hood and McLaws attack. So we are going to have more or less a lull in the battle on July 2nd. In your game, of course, if you're playing it, that probably wouldn't happen. Let's go on to the 9 o'clock turn, July 2nd. Okay, well, that's a simple turn. All I did was move Gamble and Devon back. I'm quite content to only adjust the Union line depending on what the Confederates do. So, on to the Confederate turn. And that's the Confederate turn. Quite simple, just moving Alexander and Eshelman up. The next forces that come in are at 11 o'clock. So at this point, I can probably fast forward the game, and I'll show you what I mean by that, what I'm going to do. Okay, since the next troops that come in are only at 11 o'clock, that's Sykes' 5th Corps, and nothing comes in for the Confederates until noon, which is Law's brigade. I'm just going to fast forward. So I'm going to do the 10 o'clock and the 11 o'clock turn together and just double the movement, since I don't intend to do any attacking anyway. That's one way to make your game faster, by the way. If both parties agree to, you're not going to do anything, just move troops in the background, you can speed up your game by advancing the turn record. I've seen this done in several games, like Guns at Gettysburg has that rule, and it's a good way of saving time if both parties don't intend to do anything. So I'll do that. We'll catch the action after I've moved the 11 a.m. turn. That's with Sykes' 5th Corps on. Then we'll catch up with the Confederate move, then go on to the noon turn. Okay, this is the situation after 11 o'clock. And you can see that Sykes' 5th Corps is now coming up. Some more of the volunteer artillery, and I moved Devon and Gamble over to behind the big round tops here. Now, the nice thing about war games, by moving counters, looking at maps and stuff, you can see already that the battle is slipping away from Lee's fingers. By delaying, by not attacking, the troops are not in position. There's no coordinated plan between Ewell and Longstreet. Lee is losing the battle, whether he knows it or not. The Union Army is now concentrating much faster than the Confederate, and he is outnumbered. And we have to remember that Pickett's division is still not in the game. Now that's only 3 brigades, mind you, with some artillery. But what you see here is virtually what General Robert E. Lee has to fight with on July 2nd. So these troops here and the troops on the ground have to defeat the Union Army that's on the ground here. And as you recall, the point score was 20 points to 20 points at the end of July 1st. So the die, King die, is going to determine a lot of these fights, and we'll see how it goes. Now, I will say that it is awkward playing yourself, right? I mean, I'm playing both sides, so I can't really outthink the other player. And that's where solitaire play falls down a little bit. I'm trying to play as honest as I can, do the best move I can for the Confederate, do the best move I can for the Union, but two-player play is far more entertaining. Anyway, I'll fast forward again until everybody's in position, and then maybe we can sort of get this battle going on July 2nd. Okay, this is the situation after noon, and I can see I may have to tweak some of the arrivals of the 5th Corps. I think they're arriving a little too soon, but that's something I can look at later. Devon and Gamble are still here, and we're now seeing the first units of the cavalry come up, McIntosh and Gregg. And I see I'm missing a counter for Pleasanton, so I'll add him later. But yeah, there's little tweaks to the game that I'm still going to adjust, but I'm still quite pleased with the way things are happening. So we should see combat fairly soon. And as you can see, Lee's going to have his hands full taking on the Army of the Potomac. Now, one thing I will do that Ewell did not do in the real battle, when Longstreet makes his attack, depending on the, remember the initiative die rolls, I'll try to have Ewell attack also to create a diversion. That's what Lee intended, but Ewell didn't really get his attack going on July 2nd until late afternoon. But for game purposes, I'm going to have the two try to coordinate. So the next time we catch the action, I'll have Hood and McLaws and good old Law's brigade in position to move forward and do an attack. And I'll still have to roll for the Union initiative, like for Sickles and stuff, in case they want to counterattack. And I don't know yet whether I'll simulate Sickles' move to the front here. That's often seen as a mistake by the Union commander, but Abraham Lincoln didn't think so. He thought by Sickles' corps moving to the peach orchard and the wheat field, he might have saved the day at Gettysburg. Most historians do not take that view. They think it was a mistake. But, I think the jury's still out on that one. Because what if Sickles had stayed in this line? And what if Hood and McLaws had attacked and drove him back? Could have been an entirely different story. Don't know. That's a nice thing about history. You can read, read for years and still come up with different hypotheses. Anyway, let's catch the action then, just before Hood and McLaws are ready to attack. Okay, this is the situation at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the Union player. And again, you can see the battle slipping out of Lee's hands because the elements of the 6th Corps are now beginning to arrive on the Baltimore Pike, and the Union Army is getting even stronger. I've got the cavalry here just watching the right flank of the Confederates, and the Confederates will move for 2 o'clock. And at this time, I will probably start to begin my attack with Hood and McLaws. Now, in real life, I think Longstreet attacked around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but that was a different situation than we have here. By the time Hood and McLaws did attack, the situation had changed. Lee's original plan was to attack up the Emmitsburg Road this way, because the Union Army wasn't there. But the situation had changed by the time the troops were ready to go through. Sickles was actually up here, and these troops collided with those troops, and some of them actually veered off, and that's where you got your battle for Devil's Den and Little Round Top and all that. So that won't necessarily happen in this game. But let's move the Confederates. I'll try to get a coordinated attack if I can, because we still have to roll the die, remember. And let's see how it goes. And this is kind of amusing, almost as if the gods are laughing at their little joke. I rolled for Longstreets Initiative, and he didn't get it. And I rolled for A.P. Hill, and he didn't get it. And Ewell didn't get it. So Confederates will not be able to enter zones of control this turn, which doesn't matter too much because they're far enough away that that isn't going to be a factor. But I thought it was amusing that they didn't get their initiative. So I'll move the troops, and we'll pick up the action after I've moved the Confederates. Okay, this is the situation after the Confederates have moved. Hood and McLaws have moved forward. Now, I have not put the little "we moved" markers on the artillery units because they're just coming off anyway. Since I'm not using them to attack, it's really unnecessary to include them. I've got Anderson's division from Hill's Corps coming up to support, and I've got Hill, or rather Ewell, moving at least 2 divisions forward on the salient off of Cemetery Hill. So my intention is that next turn the Confederates, if they get the rolls, will be able to attack. Now I won't have just the Union sit there. Seeing this movement, I'll move some Union troops to meet that attack. So the next turn will be the 3 o'clock turn, and we might see some combat that turn. Okay, this is after the Union have moved. I've moved Sickles' Corps over here to oppose Hood's division. Made some minor revisions here on Cemetery Hill. And the 12th Corps here will be able to meet Ewell. Now I just rolled for initiative, and we got a little bit better results this time. Longstreet did get his initiative, so these units will be able to attack. A.P. Hill did get his initiative, so his unit will be able to attack if they want. But Ewell did not. So Ewell's corps is not coordinating with these two. So let's catch the move after I've moved the Confederates into battle, and we'll have our first fight for the 3 o'clock turn. Let's see how it goes. Okay, we've got a few brigades engaging Sickles' Corps. I can't say that they're going to be at great odds either. Now, I have not put the move markers on the artillery, because again, I'd just be taking them off. But these artillery, because they moved, will not be able to aid in the attack. Now, I just read something this morning which I did not know. I've never read this in any account before. And it was an account by Porter Alexander here, who is an artillerist in the 1st Corps. And he specifically says that Confederate artillery traditionally did not fire over the heads of their men to hit Union targets. He says that because of the nature of the Confederate shells and stuff, they had premature explosions, and it made Confederate infantry very nervous to have their own artillery fire over their heads. And I've never read that before in any account of the Civil War. Makes me wonder if I should add that rule to the game. But again, with 1 hour time scales, we're getting into the weeds there about the tactics. So we have to assume that the artillery would be firing and adding to the attack before the infantry closed. But it's something to think about, something I didn't know before. Always learning when you're reading about Civil War literature. So anyway, we have a couple of attacks, not very good ones, I'm afraid. Robertson's going to take on Burling here. It's more or less a 1-to-1. And this 5 is going to take on these 2 brigades, 7, 1-to-2. So we've got one medium attack and one soak-off attack. But the Confederates are close now, that they should be able to do better attacks next turn. Of course, the Union's going to react to that by throwing in their own brigades. So let's catch the action after I've done these 2 attacks. Okay, well, as I suspected, if you go in on low odds, you're going to pay for it. And Robertson certainly did. He got a hit and was routed. Benning, or was it Benning? No, it was Anderson got hit, but he only got an attack or retreat. So the Union did very well. They completely repulsed the Confederate attack. So we're going to be doing the 4 p.m. turn in the afternoon, and still more units come onto the field for the Union. So it's early yet, but I believe Lee's the victory for the Confederates is just going between Lee's fingers. It doesn't look very good for the Confederates. But the die is a fickle thing. You never know. They could get lucky, and let's see what the Union does. And we'll also be rolling for Sickles and Sykes because they could counterattack. And for this game, because we're now not following history, we're now into the fantasy level. We're not following the historical battle now. Because, of course, the real battle was at the Peach Orchard here with Sickles' Corps. I've got the Confederates much further to the front. So we're now talking a hypothetical Battle of Gettysburg, but let's see how it goes. Okay, this is the action after I just moved the Union troops. Now, as the fates would have it, the Union got lucky. They did get offensive orders for Sickles, and they did get offensive orders for Sykes. They also got it for Sedgwick, and they also got it for Hancock. So they rolled very well, which means they could attack this turn. And I moved in a bunch of 3rd Corps units to counterattack McLaws' advancing forces. Now, a lot of these are low odds attacks too, mind you. 1-to-1 or so. I think there's a 3-to-2 here. And I have marked these artillery units that moved because they cannot add their fire in. The 3rd Volunteers could because they do have a line of fire to Law. I don't know if they will bother with that. And anyway, we'll do these attacks and see what happens. But this counterattack could be devastating to the Confederates. Let's see how it goes. Okay, well, the attacks had mixed success. Carr was able to damage Robertson and rout him, but Barksdale held off and routed Brewster, and Kershaw managed to repulse Ward and Graham taking a loss. So it wasn't a disastrous counterattack, but it wasn't a great one either. So let's take the Confederates and see if they can rally from this fiasco. Okay, I made one error. I forgot to bring on the remnants of the 6th Corps, which is still coming up the Baltimore Pike. So this is not looking good for the Confederates. Almost the whole Union Army is now concentrated with the cavalry. In fact, the whole army is. Forgot to put on Hunt, too. He's the artillery leader. So let's do the Confederate move. And victory is slipping away from them very fast. Wow! In a very cruel twist of fate, Longstreet didn't get his attack orders, so he can't move any new units into primary for the combat. Units that are already in combat can fight. And in a bizarre twist of fate, A.P. Hill did get his offensive orders, since he's beside Robert E. Lee anyway. And Ewell got a 6, so Ewell can finally put some pressure on the Union right. Again, an uncoordinated attack, much the way the real battle went. Let's move the Confederates now and see what they can do. Okay, for this move I'll have to use something I don't use too much. It's this little wee Academy Games line of sight thing. Don't get to use it too much. But I'm not sure if Eshelman has a shot against Carr, but I think he does. You center the line of sight, Carr to Eshelman. Yeah, it's 50-50. I'll give it to them. Yeah, there's a hole there that he could fire, so we have to assume that there's other tactical stuff going on here, guns moving around and stuff. So, yeah, we'll let Eshelman shoot at Carr in this example. Okay, we've got a few attacks going in here. It actually wasn't Eshelman I was checking, it was Henry. Henry will fire with Barksdale on Carr. We've got some, again, all low odds attacks here on the center. And Ewell did make an attack over here on the Union right. Unfortunately, they couldn't use the artillery. They moved this turn. I would have liked to wait another turn to get the artillery support, but then I don't know if I'd get the initiative. So I decided to go in with what I had. So these attacks, I think, will almost decide the battle for July 2nd. If the Confederates are not successful here, I think the Confederate Army has more or less shot their bolt for July 2nd. Let's see how the attacks go. Okay, well, it's very, very, very bad news for the Confederates. I rolled a whole string of 6s, which is bad. They were all repulses, all with losses, several units routed, and it's very bad. Barksdale took a hit, routed. Wilcox took a hit, routed. Only Posey's brigade is the only one that actually won a battle and made a lodgment in the Union line, advancing onto Cemetery Ridge. But he's going to get swamped by the Union in the counterattack. Ewell's attacks over on that front were a complete disaster. Every single one failed. And not looking good. At this point, I'm just going to look up the points in the game and see what the points are. Because I think the Confederates couldn't possibly win the battle now. Maybe I can do one last attack here. But the Union moves next, and depending on their initiative, they can counterattack. But I think the Confederates have lost this battle by 4 p.m. in the afternoon of July 2nd. Okay, as I suspected, the Confederates have probably lost the battle, even points-wise. The Union have 30 points, and the Confederates have 26 points. But what are the Confederates facing? They're facing a Union army that's totally intact, it's on the defensive, and are probably going to be able to repulse anything the Confederates can throw at them. But for the sake of the video, let's keep on going a bit more. But I declare that the Confederates have lost this battle. Even when Pickett arrives, that's only 3 more brigades plus an artillery battalion, and that's not going to make the difference. Lee's outnumbered, and he's got an exterior line, all the disadvantages that Lee had at the real battle. But I'll continue on, because I'm curious, we're war gamers. We like to fight until something breaks. And so we're going to do the 5 o'clock turn of the Union. And I'll be honest, I'll roll for the Union corps, and if they can counterattack, they will counterattack. Let's catch the action after the Union have moved for the 5 o'clock turn. Okay, maybe the luck does even out a little bit, although in peculiar ways. For that turn, the Union rolled for initiative, and only Slocum's corps, the 12th, and Sickles got attack orders, so only those 2 corps can counterattack. But that might be enough to do some real damage to the Confederates. Now, these units that already begin in the zone of control of Confederate units are allowed to attack. So we'll pick up the action after I've moved those 2 corps and set up the attacks. Not too much in the way of counterattacks, but the Union don't have to take any chances. So I didn't even bother moving these men. Just didn't even bother. I don't think they have to move. Anyway, they did a small attack here. Carr is going to hit Kershaw, when with the artillery from the front, they should smash Kershaw up. These units will take on Posey, and they have a 2-direction attack. And the 12th Corps over here is going to take some risky attacks, but they could result in Confederate units being destroyed, and artillery units at that. So they're iffy attacks, but what the heck. Union have got nothing to lose, and we'll pick up the action after I've resolved the attacks. Okay, mixed success on those attacks. That brigade that was surrounded more or less got an exchange. Anyway, that hurt Kershaw. He took some Yanks down at the same time. The Yanks were able to repulse the Confederates here and here. Over on the right, Ewell's front, the attacks were, well, I have to say, overall successful. The Union did take the ground, taking some casualties, destroying some Confederate units. So in that turn, 2 units of Confederates were destroyed and 2 units of Union. A big bloodbath, but the Confederates are not in a good position. So we're going to do their turn now, but I think it's over unless Hood or McLaws can counterattack here and do some really good damage. The Confederate army is defeated. Let's see what they can do. Wow. Well, the continued string of bad luck for the Confederate continues. Maybe we are recreating history here. Anyway, Longstreet did not get his initiative. Neither did Ewell, but Hill did. So Hill could make some counterattacks here, but into what? The main Union line? I don't think so. So I'm going to pull back the Confederates generally because Longstreet didn't get any attack orders. I'm going to evaluate the points and probably make a decision on the video. Okay, this is the situation after the Confederates have pulled back for the 5 p.m. turn. Now, as we know from the turn record, there would only be 1 more turn of daylight and 2 of dusk. But I'm going to count up the points and make an evaluation. But I think the battle is over as far as I'm concerned. You can see that the Longstreet is pulled back here. He's got a pretty good defensive line. Anderson pulled back, and Ewell, way over on the right, also pulled back. So the Confederates are not gaining any ground. They are, in fact, losing it. And they're probably losing in points. But I'll add those up and see what the point score is. Okay, I've done the points again just to make sure. And the Union have 38 points and the Confederates have 30. So the Confederates are certainly losing the battle. And of course, the Confederates are outnumbered still. All of the Union Army is now present, and the only brigades that would be available to the Confederates are Pickett's division, which is only 3 more brigades. And they come in, late afternoon and are only available for like the morning of July 3rd. So I'm going to declare the game a Union win. And I'm going to do some little tweaks to my modified system. I'm going to allow some stacking. I think when you have a brigade that's only 1, like Hall here, he should be able to stack with other units. I might make the stacking maybe 6 strength points, I'm not sure. So I've got some tweaking to do there. Got to tweak some artillery to long range a little bit and the way units are out. But overall, I'm very pleased with the way this game has turned out. The work I put into it, to me, is borne fruit. But remember that the original system is not mine. It's a designer Mick Uhl's system, his Gettysburg 77 game, which I've enjoyed playing a lot on this new map, new counters, and some new rules. For those of you who have watched all the videos, well, thank you very much for watching. I hope I've made it as interesting as I can. And anyway, that's it for this little replay of Gettysburg. Thank you for watching.